Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Sean Anderson, Most Valuable Podcast, and the upcoming segment is from our full Fast Break podcast that we recorded. And if you do want to check out that full podcast, head over to Blog Talk Radio /The Fast Break. You'll be able to find the full podcast over there. But let's move on now. We talked enough about D Rose, a former number one, former MVP, and we're going to be talking about who is a number one in the NBA. And we got to preface this is Ricky and I, we had a debate before the fast break about Jimmy Butler and is he a number one? And I said no. I said he's a great number two, and I said he's not a number one. Ricky obviously nodding his head, saying Jimmy Butler is a number one. But really, the baseline of this discussion, we came up with players who are number one, players who are up-and-coming number ones, and then the fringe that we will discuss. The baseline is, can he be a focal point to a championship team? And then the other ones are, can he be trusted to take over a game? And then can he is your go-to for the last shot? So the for sure number ones we came up with, LeBron, KD, Steph, CP3, Russ, AD, and Harden. And then we also had up-and-comers that aren't in the fringe and aren't in the for sure number ones, but will most likely be number ones at some point. Giannis Antetokounmpo, pretty much a number one already, but, you know.
I believe you said the name wrong. It's Giannis.
That hard
Buck
G.
fans are really going to be mad at you, Sean.
Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yes, he is the number so far, but we're saying up and coming just because he hasn't done the playoffs yet. He hasn't been in the playoffs. We don't know what he can do there.
Yep.
But really, Giannis is going to be a number one. Then we have Karl Anthony Towns, just waiting on that one. I mean, he's been fantastic already in 2 years, just really hasn't enough around him. We also threw Wiggins in there. We also throw Jokic in there from the Denver Nuggets, and we also threw in the process for Dave. But now the players we're going to be discussing, who are they, or are they a number one? We got obviously Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, Paul George, John Wall, Kemba, Boogie, Dame, Gordon Hayward, and Isaiah Thomas. So, Ricky, is Jimmy Butler number one?
I'd say for sure. And the reason why is you look at the criteria that we have set forth, and just so both me and you can get involved, I want you to read them off one by one. What's the first one?
Can he be the focal point of a championship team?
He can be the focal point of a championship
Why?
team. I feel like Jimmy Butler.
He's gotten his team to the playoffs already.
And that's the thing. Like,
this team's so great right now. Jimmy Butler's the focal point.
The thing with Jimmy Butler is you look at this team, and yes, it's a dumpster fire, but that's not Jimmy Butler's fault.
No, but
that's the team. Like, that's the management around him not putting a team there for him. This is a guy who I totally trust to take the last second shot. Has hit a few of them in his career. He's entering his prime, and this is a guy where if he's my guy, I'm saying we could win a championship with Jimmy Butler. He can take over a game. He has before this year. He freaking twisted his ankle this year. Came out for a second.
He scored 40
said,
against the Nets, damn it.
I am going to come back in.
An elite player.
Hobbled on an ankle and still hit the game winner.
Nearly pulled a Paul Pierce.
I don't care who the team is.
Wheelchair.
That's impressive in itself. This is a guy he has the mental makeup and the drive you want for a number one. And this is the thing with Jimmy, I will say. Has he had the past to prove it? Not yet. But that's because he had this guy in front of him, Derrick Rose, that he said, you know what? I'm overtaking this number one. And he did.
He said he was going to overtake it, but actually never did when D Rose was on the team, and then had pretty much forced the front office to pick either Jimmy or D Rose. Obviously, you're going to pick Jimmy because he's younger. But
not just that, shows you if they really believed in Derrick Rose, they would have picked Derrick Rose.
Yeah, because we love this front office and all the moves they've been making.
But if they believed in Derrick Rose, they would have picked Derrick Rose.
Yeah, because he's last year in the contract coming off major injuries and because he has personality issues. That's
just
why.
Saying, if they
and Jimmy Butler's also younger and was already under contract. Okay.
If they believed in him, they would have picked him.
I believe in D-Wade, Rajon Rondo, and Jimmy Butler. This team's so great. Jimmy Butler doesn't have the stats or results to prove or back that up at all. See, I also trusted Brandon Roy to take over a game because he did in Portland. I also trusted him for the last shot of the game because he made a ton of them. Guess what? Brandon Roy also had no ACL and also wasn't the focal point of a championship team. I know,
so
obviously,
you're
injuries.
Jimmy Butler to Brandon Roy.
Brandon Roy was a fantastic player.
I'm not saying
but never
he's
had
not,
the results.
But you're comparing Jimmy Butler. I would say Jimmy Butler is leaps and bounds above.
Do you remember Brandon Roy?
I do.
If he didn't have injuries, he would still be great in the NBA.
But that's the thing. He didn't have ACLs. Jimmy Butler does.
But,
so, I mean, injuries is
what I'm saying,
different circumstance for him.
But what I'm saying is I agree that he can take over. Jimmy Butler can take over a game, and he can be my go-to for the last shot. So is Brandon Roy. He's not the focal point of a championship team.
But Jimmy is.
I don't think so. That's the argument that I'm making, is that Jimmy Butler, the thing that's really across the board for our, for sure number ones, is they have all had seasons with at least 27 or over per. And really the only outliers this season that haven't matched that are LeBron, who's at 26.7 because he's been coasting, and Steph, who's currently at 23. But last year and the year before, he was at 31 and 28. Right now, KD's at 27. Steph was at 31 and 28. CP3 is at 27. Russ is at 30. AD's at 28. And James Harden's at 28 right now. Jimmy Butler's currently sitting at 25.9. He is not a number one in my mind. I think he's a good number two. I think he's a great number two. If he's your number two, you have a fantastic team. But I look at Jimmy Butler, and I don't see a guy who can really take over a game like a LeBron James, take over a game like a Steph Curry. Steph Curry can go lights out, blood in his eyes, just shooting from three like no other man. He can just take it into the lane as well and throw up those floaters. He can be everywhere, at least defensively. I know he's not the greatest defender. Jimmy's definitely a better defender there, but I look at this and Steph has that makeup to really take a team. He's done it before. He did it in college. And he's done it before.
The last time
has he ever done it in the playoffs? Has he ever done it in the big stage?
And that's
yes
the
or
thing.
No?
With Jimmy Butler, this is now, he's in the time where we've been saying he's entering his prime. He will get to the playoffs, and he will be able to prove
he's been in the playoffs before.
And that was the thing.
He wasn't their number one.
He wasn't their number one at the time because
but
we
great
still
number
had
ones
Derrick
actually
Rose.
take it over. Number ones take it over.
But you got to look at the team.
He can close
team
a
that he
game.
was
Kawhi
at,
took over. Kawhi became the number one for the Spurs.
Kawhi had
became
two games where it was like, the first two were, and then he turned it on for.
He turned it on and was better than LeBron James and won and beat LeBron James in 5.
Was an actual team. That Spurs team was an actual team. The Bulls team that went to the playoffs, they've been good teams, but one of those playoff appearances was Derrick Rose got injured. So we were the best team in the East that year. Another one, the one where Jimmy was actually starting to come up, we should have gone on in that one. Jimmy had a huge game win. I'm going to say game winner with 30 seconds left in game one against the Cavs. Should have won that series because guess what? No timeout.
Okay.
He's a number one. This is a guy where he's got the leadership, he's got the drive and everything that you want in a star player for your team, and he can take the final shot and take over a game.
All right, I'm going to take this for right now, and then Dave's going to take it after me because obviously he wants to say. Real quick, Kawhi took over in 2013, 2014, was the finals MVP, and then ever since, he has been a number one. Last year, 26.11 per, which is pretty much around that superstar level, and right now he's currently sitting at 27. He is one of the best defenders, and he also can score like Jimmy. He's not the best, at least from three, but he's a better free throw shooter, and he's got a great off-ball dribble. Again, let me speak. He's taken his team to the playoffs, gotten plus 60 wins. He's been the focal point of the Spurs for the past 2 years, and this team has been one of the best in the West, which is the better conference, and you can't argue that because really on the Eastern Conference, it has been the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that's it. Last year, Jimmy wasn't able to do that. Jimmy had a good team. There was a lot of pieces there. They were a very incohesive team, but they weren't able to get there.
That team was a clusterfuck of
But
just
there was
emotions.
a lot of talent. Again, I said they were a very incoherent team, but there was a lot of talent on there. Paul Gasol, Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, Joakim Noah. You had a lot of talent on that team. Again, very incohesive, but that team should have at least been in the playoffs.
Yeah, but
they should have at least been able to further on.
2 points. 1 point and then a question to counteract.
They didn't make it in the
yours
playoffs anyways.
Was that last year was basically an alpha dog fight between Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose for that number one.
And number ones take it over.
And also,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, and also he did. He's the number one right now, and Derrick Rose is not in town.
And again,
so he won.
He
won.
Because he's younger and was under control.
Or did he actually
He was younger
win?
and under control.
Here's the bigger question.
No, we're going to Dave.
No, when you bring up Kawhi Leonard, why just because Kawhi Leonard's a number one, why does that automatically make Jimmy not a number one?
It doesn't. But I'm saying that if you said that you would take Jimmy over Kawhi.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm saying that Jimmy Butler's not a number one, and I would compare, I would take Kawhi over as a
actually,
number one.
I never said I would take Jimmy over Kawhi, but both of them are number ones to me. Kawhi is not.
Who would you
I'm
take?
not sitting there.
Jimmy or Kawhi?
Well, I would take Jimmy because I have that personal affection for Jimmy and being a fan of the Bulls.
And I'm trying
they're both number ones.
I'm trying to build an argument. I'm saying Jimmy is not a number one, and I'm saying Kawhi is. So therefore, we can have the discussion why I'm using Kawhi as a baseline. I think Kawhi's a number one. Dave, you haven't had a chance to talk.
Yeah, it's nice. I wanted to let this kind of run, though. You guys are a little passionate about it.
Well, I just
a
don't
little
get
bit
it.
extra hot sauce
I
in there.
just don't get it. Like, why, just because he's number one, why can't the other person be the number
And
one?
that's fine, but what we do is we compare stats and we compare results and we compare by the eye test. And one of the things you were talking about was closing out games in the playoffs. And I'll agree with you. Jimmy hasn't had a great track record with that. What
He
we've
also
seen
hasn't
out
had
of-
the ability, which is fair.
Right, but what we've seen out of him
The
this season,
opportunity,
I just
would
said
say.
that.
No, you said ability.
The ability to, because he hasn't been the
Okay.
opportunity.
Okay.
Calm
interpret
down.
how you want, you
Yeah,
petty motherfuckers.
I didn't want that to be a, well,
Let
he's
Dave
not
talk.
good.
So what I'm saying is this season, what we've seen out of Jimmy is he has the ability to close. He is the guy that the ball is in his hands, and he is taking every single foul shot. Like, that man gets to the line. It's just rinse and repeat. It's just second nature to him at this point. Like, he doesn't think about it. He just does. And I don't know there's a lot of guys who I'm more comfortable with closing out a game from the foul line than him. That's one thing that I think that his game has elevated this year from where it hasn't been in the past. I will agree with you that
You know what, take
he
Kawhi.
wasn't. I'll get to your boy. So I do agree with you that he didn't win out that number one role from Derrick Rose. That was a default choice, and it wasn't him overshadowing. And you know what? Now that they brought in Dwayne Wade, I know Wade said, "Oh, not my team, not my team," but that's again taking some of the burden off of him being the true one and him being that standout performer. He's got that guy who's just a tiny bit worse than him, just a tiny bit.
Real quick, who's the leader on that Bulls team? D Wade, Jimmy Butler isn't. Number ones lead the team.
I mean, I would still say Butler is the one
Butler-
over
But I'm
saying-
Wade
no,
right now.
Butler- but I'm
is
saying the- I'm
Butler's
saying
the
the-
for sure leader.
I'm saying the team leader.
D Wade's the coach on the floor.
Yeah.
So team leader.
No, he's a coach.
I'm
There's
not
a
saying
difference.
player wise. I'm saying
I
LeBron
see your
James.
point.
LeBron James is the coach of the Cavs.
Yeah.
You really can't pick between KD and Steph as the coach of the Warriors. I
No,
think that's an
I think
anomaly.
Kerr has the respect there.
Well,
The difference is that
yeah.
I know where you're going with the LeBron thing, and I agree because that's similar for Wade, and I think he got it from Wade.
CP3, leader of the team in LA. You could also look at Russ and Harden too. I mean, obviously they have coaches there, but
Yeah.
really, if you look at those teams, those are the leaders. D Wade is the leader on that team.
See, I would say it's a different kind of. It's not like he's the one. Jimmy Butler's not answering to D Wade. D Wade's to be the veteran to kind of help Jimmy maybe get into and get better in the aspects that you're saying and not
Possible. I'll respect your decision there.
I would also say Kawhi leads his team as well.
That is where I want to go next is Kawhi Leonard because I would take Kawhi over Jimmy, and this is they're both phenomenal defense. They're both phenomenal two-way players.
I also don't want to say that Jimmy Butler's not a great player. I just think that he's not a number one.
That's fair. That's fair. My only problem is look, Kawhi, phenomenal two-way player. Great shooter, and even his three-point shot, he's been better. He's continuing to improve his game. The problem I have with him is that closer mentality, and we've seen that for very short periods of time, and then he's disappeared entirely in series where he should be the guy taking all the shots. He needs to know when to take over a game, and he doesn't have that instinct yet. And that's what I know that Jimmy has because Jimmy knows he's playing with a bunch of shit around him. He's like, look, if I don't do this, my team's not going to be able to win a game. So I'm going to step up and do that. Kawhi Leonard has been put in situations, like you said, against the Cavs, where he played above all expectations and went shot for shot with LeBron, and that was awesome.
61% from the field or something in those last four games.
It was ridiculous. But then the next year when they came back, and he was disappointed. He disappeared on offense. He passed more than he shot. And to guys who shouldn't. I mean, LaMarcus Aldridge had a phenomenal couple game span where he was just killing it. But at the same time, if it's Kawhi's team, he should be the guy. And he's not. He's passing up on those opportunities.
What you're talking about right now?
Yeah.
No, I said what year you're talking about right now.
Oh, I was talking
the
about
year after they won the finals?
championship.
Okay, so
Yes.
2014, 2015.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
So we watched him shy away from it. And then in the following years, it's just been like, yes, Kawhi is there. He's very, very good. But I don't think he has that killer instinct. He is not the guy who knows my time to take over a game. This is when it's going down, and I'm going to do it for us. I don't feel like he's got that. He's not a vocal guy. I think that's what kind of hurts him in that aspect. He's gifted with the best coach in the NBA, though. And you know what? No amount of outside help will really fix that. So he's going to keep doing him. And I think it's up to Pop to kind of force those possessions through him and build up that confidence in Kawhi. And I legitimately think they're both number ones.
Well, and the one thing that I do think about is just because Kawhi Leonard has, like Dave said, where doesn't know when to take over a game, just because you're missing that one aspect we had on our list, doesn't mean you're not number one.
Right.
We got CP3 on there, and I think we could all agree that CP3 is pass first. He's not a guy that's going to, you know what, let's clear it out, isolation for CP3.
But also for CP3, taking over a game doesn't mean you have to score the most points.
Yeah, we watched him go 20 assist games without a turnover, which is mind-blowing.
Like, even when it's like, okay, last shot, who's going to take it? We're looking for CP3 to dish it to somebody or find somebody down low.
But CP3's also taken over games and has taken last shots before. It's not his primary goal.
It's not out of there, but it's not his main two. And that's why the one thing that I was just saying, like, just because Kawhi Leonard might not have that doesn't mean he's not a number one.
And he's hit game winners before.
That Kawhi is not number one. I just look at Jimmy Butler and I see everything that you want in a number one. The only thing he hasn't had is the chance to prove himself in the playoffs, because every time he's been in the playoffs, he hasn't had the opportunity to be the number one because the management and the team had someone that they were trying to say he's the number one over you.
And what I'm saying is, and this is the kind of point that I'm going to kind of try to transition away from the Kawhi and Jimmy thing to just the other guys we mentioned, is that Kawhi in that finals against LeBron in 2013 and 2014, he was not the number one going into the finals, but he ended the finals as the number one. I would say he ended the finals as the number one player for the Spurs. He ended in those last 4 games.
I'd still go with Timmy D.
In those last 4, he was the leader, as D Wade is currently the leader, at least on the floor. But I would say Kawhi Leonard took over as the leader, at least on the floor. And then once Timmy kind of left, and now we're in the current situation they are, I would say Kawhi now leads the Spurs.
It was a better transition than what Jimmy had, but
Agreed.
I would still say that Duncan was the number one until he left.
What I'm saying is Kawhi showed on the floor that he was the number one.
In the most crunch time as possible.
In the clutch time as possible. Yep. In the NBA Finals. Let me finish. In the NBA Finals, he took over. You started to talk. I know when you're going to interrupt.
Didn't.
Kawhi stepped up and showed that he could be a number one in the NBA Finals, and that's where he did it, on the court. Management wasn't thinking Kawhi's going to be the number one. They thought Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker would step up. Danny Green, he stepped up before. He would be the number one. Jimmy has had opportunities to step up. I know, obviously he hasn't, in the past 2 years when he was in the playoffs, D Rose was looked at, but he didn't step up and show he was the number one in those playoff times.
I think he has stepped up in times, though. I mean, you look at...
Well, they didn't go to the NBA Finals. Well, they weren't able to beat LeBron James. Well, Kawhi did that. Jimmy was able to show that he was the number one.
Just because Kawhi beat LeBron James, he's
but I'm saying that he was able to beat him and he was able to take his team there. Yes, Kawhi could have had a better team and a better coach, but he still did it.
But it's one of those things where you said it. They had a full team.
You switch Kawhi and Jimmy.
That Bulls team was not in the same situation, and that Bulls team on that year that Jimmy hit that. I call it a game winner even when it was with 30 seconds left. That big shot in game one of the second round.
Did it win the game?
Yeah, it did.
Then it's a game winner.
It doesn't, even though it was 30 seconds and the Cavs still came back.
A buzzer beater and game winner is different.
And was I know the shot that won 2 games later, Derrick Rose also hit one. That's where the one you had where he's just giving the face like this. But that year, that Bulls team.
Yep.
I can't do it exactly like
I know.
Derrick
I'm remembering the face in my head. I'm saying it's a great face.
That playoffs also had the phantom timeout call that should have been a technical. And am I saying we win that series? No, I'm not saying that, we win because of that, but we're up 3-1 then. And then it creates a different opportunity. I just think that the thing of you saying, well, Jimmy hasn't done it here, my counter to that is let's wait and see when that happens, because Jimmy will be in big playoff series down the line. Let's see what happens.
My final counterpunch, you mentioned the D Rose injury. D Rose goes down. You said you were the best team in the East. D Rose is obviously playing out of his mind then, but Jimmy Butler had the opportunity to step up. D Rose wasn't playing.
Jimmy Butler was a role player in 2012.
I know, but still, Jimmy had the opportunity to. Kawhi was also a role player going into that league. I believe it was his second year in San Antonio. No one was expecting him. Jimmy Butler did still step up in that series, but he wasn't able to become the number one. I'm not saying that he would be the number one the next season, but people saw him. Jimmy
didn't even start a game his rookie year.
I know he didn't. I know he didn't.
And that second year, he
still played in the playoffs. I believe, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, he still had around 15 to 16 points per game.
But he wasn't the same Jimmy. Like, I'm saying right now,
It's a different Jimmy.
Butler is a number one. If I'm going back to that 2012 series, he's not a number one. But right now he is. That's what I'm saying.
But I'm saying he's never proven to me that he is a number one. He could have done it in 2012. He didn't. He could have done it in 2014. He didn't. He hasn't done it this year. This team would be a playoff team if he was a number one.
And I look at the play that he's had this year alone, and I say that's a number one.
But I'm saying if his play, and this is the last thing because we're just going back and forth, if his play was truly a number one, this team would be a playoff team now.
Well, let's see when the team gets to the playoff. When he gets to the playoffs in his time, let's see what happens.
I know you're a Bulls homer. They're not making the playoffs this year.
No, I didn't say this year. I said in his time.
Let's go now to the other players because another guy, the team that we're kind of deciding do they have a number one was Toronto, and it was really I said they had two great number twos, and that kind of makes them a number one.
Which is an interesting.
Well, yeah. You got DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry.
Yep.
You both are picking DeMar. I'm picking Kyle if I'm picking a number one on that team because one, Kyle's the leader, I think, at least on the floor on that team. Yes, he is the floor general as the point guard, but I still feel like Kyle Lowry, with his experience of being a 10-year vet in the NBA, being 30 years old, I think he's been here, and I think that while his play is significantly less than DeMar DeRozan, at least stat-wise, his per is very similar enough to where I can say he would be more of a number one, and I would feel more comfortable of a number one than DeMar DeRozan. That's just my thoughts.
I respect your opinion, but I think you're wrong. I just flat out think you're wrong. Because DeMar DeRozan is on a heater this year. Like he started out
talk about taking over games.
He started out incredibly hot, doing things only like Michael Jordan has done in the same category at least. And I mean, he's cooling down a little bit.
Who's a number one? Also, I just want.
I mean, maybe.
I want to clarify that Michael Jordan's the number one.
I don't know about that. He couldn't win until Scotty.
You're right. Luke Longley is the number one on that team. I'm sorry, I forgot Luke.
Hey,
thanks for that.
Hey, Steve Kerr won them rings.
Yep.
Just like Ray Allen won LeBron a ring.
Just like Mario Chalmers and James Jones. James Jones, right?
The coattail rider.
Anyways, go back to DeMar DeRozan.
So, yeah, I say when you have a player who's that incredibly hot and it's a continual growth for him. Yeah. He hasn't hit that point where he's hit his cap. This is, I mean, reasonable people would assume this is a cap because this is like a very, very top end play. Like this is talking like, Kobe in his prime kind of numbers. Well, close to that at this point. We're teetering off of that point, but it's still extremely good play versus Kyle Lowry, who started off a little cooler. He's warmed up again as the season's gone on. But again, he's 30. And I'm sorry, I know 30 is still like the tail end of prime. Like at this point, we're like 27 to 31 is probably where
32, possibly.
Yeah, well, if you're LeBron fucking James, why not? You're 37.
Well, LeBron doesn't have a prime. Yeah. He's been in his prime since 16.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's still with the whatever. I'm still going to say DeMar DeRozan, yes.
See, I look at this and I see Kyle Lowry as the better defender, and I see him as a top 5 point guard. And DeMar, again.
The only thing I'll give you is if they're down by 3.
And
it's not going to DeMar. Again, I will not have DeMar take that shot.
DeMar could get an and
if
one.
We're going,
he can't. He tried against Harden. He did not.
If we're going for last shot, I mean, I think back to last year. Kyle Lowry hits that big shot against the Cavs when it was 97-97. He hits that big shot and gets the win. Then we have the discussion. Yeah. The next that fast break of can the Raptors defeat the Cavs? And I built that whole argument around Kyle Lowry last year. DeMar DeRozan was hovering around a 21 per. Right now, last year, Kyle Lowry was around 22. Kyle Lowry now is around a 23.9. DeMar DeRozan at 25 per. I don't know if they're true number ones just because I don't know if they are both so great that they make each other seem like they're number ones, and I think that could be the argument there.
Yeah, they've got a great fit. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's better than John Wall and Bradley Beal, right?
Well, Bradley Beal isn't a number one. And the other guys that we had out there,
but they're both alpha dogs.
Yeah, I think really the other guys that we had on here, and we're kind of wrapping it up here. PG-13, I don't think he's a number one at all. He has not proven to me that he is a number one. He has a skill set.
He's an incredible player.
He has a skill set to be a number one. He's not a number one. He hasn't proven that he's a number one. If we're talking about guys who haven't proven that he's a number one, I could go to him the last shot. He can take over a game. But he hasn't proven to me that he's a number one. That's kind of with Jimmy. I see the skill set there. I see the mentality there. Mm-hmm. He hasn't proven it to me. Paul George hasn't proven it to me. He didn't beat LeBron James in the finals when the Pacers were fantastic, and they had Roy Hibbert, who was ridiculous that year, and they had Lance Stevenson. I just haven't seen Paul George kind of take over there.
There was also Frank Vogel made some huge coaching mistakes in that series.
Also, great players come above
Like
that.
what was it?
Great players
Taking
come
out
above
Roy
that.
Hibbert on that LeBron James
I
draft?
forgot. But anyways, I don't see Paul George as a number one. I know we threw it in there just because he is a big name. John Wall, I truly think that he is a number one. I think that he is a guy that's hurt by his team. Jimmy Butler isn't. I think you can say that he's hurt by his team. John Wall is truly hurt by his team because he's never had anyone.
Well, and you just don't like his coach.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even before that, John Wall's never had a team around him like Jimmy Butler's had a team, like D Rose,
do that all day.
Paul Gasol,
I just love doing
Joakim
John
Noah.
Wall.
That's why I'm thinking John Wall's a true number one. We also have Kemba, Boogie, Dame, Gordon Hayward, and Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is the notable big there is Boogie, and it's in today's NBA. You know, how can that big be the number one still? And I'm on the fence with him because I would say his ability to shoot from the outside almost negates the fact that he's a big.
On all of these stats right now, he's the second on the fringe guys. You have Boogie, who's at 27.2 per, and then Kawhi's at 27.7. So, I mean, really, I think Kawhi's a number one, and I think Boogie's a number one. Because if we're saying AD's a number one, I think that Boogie with pluses, you know, he's not as injured as AD. Yes, he does have the emotional, he has the emotional problems, but also, you know what I think about Sacramento? That place is a wasteland. So I think that Boogie is a true number one,
But is it
and
more
that's
of
why
a
he's talked like a
wasteland
number
than
one.
Orlando, who has 10 number
They
ones?
got 10 number ones down there.
10 number ones, yeah. I mean, we can make a whole Magic discussion on that.
Yep.
But another one that might be controversial, and I think the other two that we really talk about, Hayward was one that maybe his team's so great. He has been playing phenomenally, but maybe his team's so great that he's kind of boosted up there. Kemba, he has the mentality there, but really hasn't proven that he can take his team deep into the playoffs. He obviously did that in UConn, but that was college. It's a different game.
Yeah.
The other guys that are kind of thrown out there, Isaiah Thomas, is he a true number one?
See, that's scary because he has such quick hands and feet, and his ability to move up and down the court as quick as he does. Other teams can't defend that, and I feel like he can rush and get things done. But I'm afraid that like when it comes down to the playoffs are half court basketball. The majority of the time you are slowing down the pace of the game, and I think that really hurts him. And that's why I'm worried about him in the playoffs. And I think that this year we're going to kind of see like how is this team going to adjust to that play style?
Well, and it's one of those things where my gut reaction right away when you were like, is he a number one? I'm like, yeah. And then I went,
numbers say yes, but my eyes say...
It's one of those things where can he take over a game?
Yeah.
Can he hit the last second shot? Yeah. Is he a leader on that Celtic team? I would say so. The only thing is I want to see a little bit more consistency because it seems like, oh yeah, we see Isaiah Thomas this
He's
night.
like dropping 51.
Drops 51, hits the game winner, and then it's like, oh, for X amount of weeks we don't see him. Oh, here he is again.
And that's the thing too with Isaiah Thomas, where obviously you're making the case that Jimmy hasn't had the chance as a true number one in the postseason. Last year, Isaiah Thomas was a number one and didn't really come up to life. I mean, yes, he was averaging 24 points per game, but he was shooting under 40% from the field and just kind of struggled out there. So I think that's kind of the case to where he's obviously in the regular season number one, but can he be a number one the whole time? Can you pick him in a fantasy draft and be like, all right, Isaiah's my number one, I can take them? I still have those qualms. I think he's a fantastic player. I think if he's your number two, you're set. But I still have a hesitancy to put him at number one. Where Boogie, I don't have a hesitancy. I have a hesitancy if I have the wrong coach, but I don't really have a hesitancy as him as a player. Kemba, I kind of have a hesitancy just because.
I don't think it's a word. I'm just tossing it out there. I mean, I love your usage.
Hesitancy.
Hey, if I can use upcline, downcline, and agree.
It's just hesitancy.
We're gonna Google this real quick. But no, I think we're looking at this. John Wall, I think out of the guys, I mean, I think Kawhi's a number one. I think that Kyle Lowry is more of a number one than DeMar DeRozan. I don't truly think he is. I think both of those are great number twos. I think that PG-13 is not a number one. John Wall is a number one. Boogie's a number one, and then Dame's a number one. So I got Dame, Boogie, John Wall, and Kawhi out of this as number ones. So that means LeBron, KD, Steph, CP3, Russ, Harden, Kawhi, Dame, and then John Wall and Boogie are my number ones. That's
fair.
Me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think you're a ton of arguments. I mean, the fringe guys, I feel like you're going to get some pushback on some of them, maybe more deserving. But
also, hesitancy is a word. The quality of state to be hesitant. So
maybe it was just all the.
I was saying it wrong, I think.
Yeah. All right.
That was weird.
Yeah, I was waiting for the Giannis.
I was waiting for the
close
wrap up.
I thought you guys were going to go into your who you thought would.
No,
I wasn't listing off all that. I don't got
Hell no.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll just make a weird jump cut.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk Giannis or do we want to just?
I don't. I have nothing to say.
All right.
Fair enough.
All right.
Maybe do a jump cut for a wrap up.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And again, upcoming, obviously we have Giannis, we have Kat, we have Wiggins, Jokic, Embiid. Giannis is pretty much should be in this fringe, but again, he's just never had the chance. If we're talking about Jimmy Butler's never had the chance, Giannis really hasn't had the chance as a number one to be, because last year was his true chance if he made it if the Bucks made it to the playoffs to kind of prove himself as a number one. I think if he goes to the playoffs this year, that's going to be the true test if he's a number one, because if you look at his stats, the way he plays, the way he can take over a game, there's no denying it this year in the regular season. Thank you. Oh shit. Oh, it's just one of our videos scared me a little bit. Don't forget to check out that one. And also don't forget to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.